You just walked into a room. You stood up from your couch with a purpose. You knew what you needed. It was clear. It was right there in your head. And then you crossed through the door. Gone. You're standing in the kitchen, or the bedroom, or the hallway, and there is nothing. A blank. Like someone reached into your skull and quietly pulled the thought out. You look around. You check your hands. You retrace your steps. You even go back to where you started, hoping the room itself will remind you. And the second you sit back down, it comes back. What just happened to you? This is not forgetfulness. This is not aging. This is not your brain failing you. This happens to neuroscientists. It happens to surgeons. It happens to people with perfect memory who can recall every detail of a conversation they had 11 years ago. Your brain didn't break. Your brain did exactly what it was designed to do. There's a name for this. Researchers call it the doorway effect. And the science behind it will change the way you think about your own memory forever. Because here's what nobody tells you. Your brain is not recording your life like a video camera. It's doing something far stranger, far more selective. And once you understand why you forget at the doorway, you'll start to see how much of your daily experience is being quietly and deliberately erased. If that unnerves you, it should. And if you want your brain explained like this every week, subscribe to Freud Mind. Because this is what we do. Before we get to the doorway, we need to destroy a myth you've probably believed your entire life. Most people think memory works like storage, like a hard drive. You experience something, it gets saved, and later you retrieve it. Simple, clean, reliable. That model is completely wrong. Memory is not storage. Memory is construction. Every single time you remember something, your brain is not playing back a recording. It is rebuilding the memory from scattered fragments. It is assembling pieces of what you sensed, what you felt, what you expected, and what happened before and after, and stitching them together in real time. Which means every memory you have is partly invented. And this matters for the doorway because the type of memory we're talking about, the kind that gets erased when you walk through a door, is a specific system. It has a name: working memory. Working memory is not where you store things long-term. It is your mental workspace. It is the RAM of your brain, not the hard drive. It holds the things you are currently thinking about, your active intentions, your current task, the reason you stood up and walked somewhere, and it is shockingly fragile. Working memory can hold roughly 4 to 7 pieces of information at once. That is it, 4 to 7. While you are using it to navigate a sentence, remember a phone number, plan what to say, it is simultaneously trying to hold on to the reason you got up. And the moment anything disrupts that workspace, the contents can simply vanish. A loud sound, a sudden emotion, a distraction, or, and here is where it gets strange, a door. Not because doors are special, but because of what a door signals to your brain. In 2011, a psychologist named Gabriel Radvansky at the University of Notre Dame published a study that caught the attention of memory researchers around the world. He asked participants to perform tasks in a virtual environment, picking up objects and carrying them through rooms. Sometimes participants moved to a new area within the same large open space. Other times, they passed through a doorway into a new room. Every single time, passing through a doorway caused significantly more forgetting than moving the same distance through open space. Same distance, same task, same object. More forgetting, just because of the door. He ran the experiment again in real physical rooms. Same result. He called what he found the event boundary. Here is the idea. Your brain does not experience your day as one continuous stream of events. That is how it feels, but it is not what is actually happening. Instead, your brain is constantly chopping your experience into discrete episodes, little mental chapters. Each chapter has a context, a location, a goal, a set of active thoughts. And when you close one chapter and open another, the brain essentially shelves the previous episode. A doorway is one of the most powerful event boundaries that exists. The moment you step through a threshold, a door, an archway, even a visible boundary between spaces, your brain interprets that as the end of one episode and the beginning of a new one. It packages up everything from the previous room: the sights, the sounds, the intentions, the working memory contents, and it files them away. Not deleted, filed, archived, moved out of active working memory and into a temporary holding state. The problem is that filing happens automatically, without your permission, without warning. And by the time you're standing in the new room wondering what you came for, the file is already closed. At this point, you might be thinking, why? Why would your brain do this? Why would it erase your intentions every time you cross a threshold? That seems like a design flaw. That seems like evolution got something badly wrong. It didn't. Think about how your ancestors lived. Not your grandparents. Go further back. Way back. 100,000 years back. A human being on an open landscape, moving between environments every few hours. Forest to open ground. Riverbank to shelter. Inside a cave to outside. Every time you crossed into a new environment, the situation changed completely. The threats were different. The resources were different. The social dynamics were different. The things you needed to pay attention to were entirely different from what you needed a moment ago. A brain that kept holding on to the goals and observations of the previous environment would be dangerous. Distracted. Still focused on the thing from back there when right here is where the predator is, where the unfamiliar face is, where the new information is. So the brain evolved to reset at boundaries, to clear the active workspace when you cross a threshold, so that full attention, clean, unloaded, alert, can be brought to the new environment. The doorway effect is not a bug. It is a survival mechanism that no longer serves you particularly well when the threshold you are crossing is the gap between your living room and your kitchen. But your brain does not know that. Your brain cannot tell the difference between stepping out of a cave onto the savannah and walking from your bedroom into the hallway. The trigger is the same, a spatial boundary, a distinct change in environment. And the response is the same. Reset. This is one of the humbling truths about the human mind. Underneath all the intelligence, all the language, all the abstract reasoning, there are systems so ancient, so hardwired, so automatic that they run on you whether you want them to or not. You do not decide to forget at the door. The door decides for you. Radvansky's work opened a door, no pun intended, into something far more complex about how memory and space interact. Follow-up studies started asking, is it just the physical act of crossing a threshold? Or is it the mental representation of a new environment that triggers the reset? Researchers tested this by having people imagine walking through rooms. Participants who mentally visualized crossing a doorway, without actually moving, showed similar memory disruptions to those who physically crossed one. This is a remarkable finding. It means the doorway effect is not primarily about your feet or your body. It is about your mind's model of where you are. Your brain maintains something researchers call a spatial mental model, a continuous internal map of your current environment, your position within it, and your active goals relative to it. The moment that mental model updates, the moment your brain registers, I am now in a different place, the context reset begins. And here is where it connects to something you have probably noticed, but never had a name for. It does not just happen with rooms. Have you ever been reading something on your phone, then switched apps, and immediately forgotten what you were looking for? You opened your notes with something to write. You opened a search bar with a question in your head. But the moment the screen changed, blank. That is a digital doorway, a visual context switch. Your brain reads the change in environment, even a screen environment, as a potential episode boundary. And the same system that evolved to reset your working memory at cave entrances is quietly misfiring at your app switcher. The screens, the tabs, the constant jumping between contexts in modern life. Every single one of them is a miniature doorway. And every single one of them is asking your brain to perform the same ancient reset that kept your ancestors alive on the open plains. We are the first species in history to live inside an environment made almost entirely of doorways. Let us go inside the brain now. When you form an intention, the moment you decide, I am going to get my phone charger, several things happen simultaneously. Your prefrontal cortex activates. This is the part of your brain behind your forehead, the seat of planning, decision-making, and working memory. It encodes the intention and holds it in an active state. At the same time, your hippocampus, the seahorse-shaped structure deep in the temporal lobe that is central to memory formation, begins binding that intention to its spatial context. It notes, this intention was formed here, in this room, in this chair, in this light. The hippocampus is profoundly spatial. It does not just record what you are thinking. It records where you were when you thought it. The memory and the location are woven together. So when you walk into a new room, the hippocampus detects the context change and begins building a new spatial memory framework. And because it is now building something new, it loosens its grip on what it was holding before. Not erased, loosened, filed in the previous context. This is why going back to the original room works. You are re-entering the spatial context in which the intention was encoded. The hippocampus recognizes the environment, pulls up the associated memory file, and there it is. The thing you forgot, sitting right where you left it in your mind, waiting. The memory was never truly gone. It was simply filed under a different location tag. And walking back through the door is your brain's version of searching by location. The prefrontal cortex, which holds working memory, is among the most energy-hungry regions of the brain. It runs hot. It tires easily. And when it is already loaded, when you are stressed, tired, distracted, or mentally overloaded, the doorway effect gets dramatically worse, which is why you notice it more on busy days. More when you are anxious. More when you are trying to hold too many things at once. Your working memory is already full, and the spatial reset at the threshold pushes whatever was teetering on the edge right off. The doorway effect is one specific, well-documented phenomenon, but it points towards something much larger about the nature of your mind. Your brain is not passively recording your experience. It is actively managing what you are conscious of at any given moment. Memory researchers talk about something called event segmentation theory, the idea that your brain is continuously dividing the flow of experience into meaningful units. When things are stable and predictable, the current event segment stays open and active. When something shifts, a location, a topic, a relationship dynamic, a goal, the segment closes. And here is the haunting implication. Most of these segmentation events happen below conscious awareness. You do not decide when a segment closes. You do not feel it happening. You simply find yourself in a new room, or a new moment, or a new mood. And the thread from before is gone. This is why certain memories feel so vivid while others are blurry or missing entirely. It is not just about emotional importance, though that plays a role. It is about whether the memory was encoded in the middle of an active event segment or right at the boundary between two. Memories formed at event boundaries, moments of transition, are often fragmentary. The context has just shifted. The brain is in reset mode. Things encoded in the middle of a stable, continuous episode tend to be richer, more detailed, more retrievable. Think about your clearest memories. A conversation deep into a dinner, not the moment you sat down. A scene from the middle of a film, not the opening credits. The heart of an argument, not the moment it started. Your brain was settled into the episode. The segment was open and running, versus the blurry memories at the edges, arrivals and departures, transitions, the walks between things, the moments at the thresholds. Your brain treats boundaries as pauses in the story. And what happens in a pause? The camera cuts away. Understanding the doorway effect does not just explain an annoying quirk of daily life. It gives you real, usable tools. The first one is simple. Verbalize your intention before you move. Say it out loud, or even just whisper it. I'm going to get my headphones. The act of verbal encoding shifts the intention from purely spatial contextual memory into phonological memory, a different system, one that is far less vulnerable to the doorway reset. Your brain now has it stored in two places instead of one. One of them will survive the crossing. The second, carry the object mentally as you walk. Actively picture the thing you are going for. See it in your mind. This keeps the intention in active cognitive processing rather than letting it slide into passive encoding. The more you are consciously holding the image, the less likely the spatial reset is to quietly drop it. The third tool might be the simplest of all. Pause at the threshold. Literally stop for 1 second before you cross the door. This is not mystical, it is neurological. You are giving your working memory a moment to consolidate, to re-encode the intention as a deliberate, conscious goal rather than an ambient background thought. 1 second. That is all it takes to dramatically reduce forgetting at the boundary. Fourth, use the environment itself. If you need to remember something for a different room, leave a physical cue at the doorway, a sticky note on the door, an object placed in the path. Your hippocampus responds powerfully to spatial cues, and a visible trigger at the threshold can reactivate the intention at exactly the moment the brain is trying to file it away. And finally, when you forget, go back. Not because it feels good, not because you enjoy retracing your steps, but because you now know that the memory is not gone. It is filed under the room you were in. Return to that location, and your hippocampus will pull the file. 9 times out of 10, it comes back instantly. You are not going back to the room because you are forgetful. You are going back because you understand how your brain actually works. Every day you move through dozens of thresholds, doors, screens, conversations, contexts. And at every single one of them, your brain is doing something ancient and automatic. Resetting, archiving, preparing for what comes next. You did not know that until now. And here is what that means. Almost every time you have stood in a room wondering what you came for, every time you felt stupid or scattered or like something was slipping, your brain was not failing you. It was protecting you the way it always has. The problem is not your brain. The problem is that the world you live in has more doorways than any human brain ever evolved to handle. You cross hundreds of mental thresholds a day. Your ancestors crossed maybe 4 or 5. The ancient reset that kept them alive is being triggered constantly, all day, on every screen, at every door, in every tab, in every room. You are not forgetful. You are a mind built for a world that no longer exists, running perfectly inside a world it was never designed for. The doorway did not erase your thought. It just archived it in a place your conscious mind could not reach. Now you know where to look. Subscribe to Freud Mind, because your brain is stranger, more fragile, and more extraordinary than you have ever been told. And we are just getting started.